Hey, I'm Jackson. I'm going to answer the age-old question. Can I turn this Spider-Man notebook into a corset to make the note set? Spider-Man edition! Okay, for this one, we're going to do more of a bustier style because the actual notebooks aren't super long. And in the front, I want to have that nice image of Spider-Man, you know, in the front because there's an awesome picture of Spider-Man, you're gonna use the awesome picture of Spider-Man. And for this one, I plan to do some weird stuff using all of the notebook. So originally, we're gonna have a pattern with 1/2 inch seam allowance, but later, we're gonna change that. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Right now, we're making 1/2 inch seam allowance, but later, it won't be. Ooh, crazy. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Okay, so I got a couple of these. I got some small notebooks and like these big fabric ones. I'm gonna cut out some of the pattern out of this and we'll go from there. So I actually decided that using the fabric from those notebooks was lame, so we're not gonna do that. On the inside, I also realized there's like a full notebook, so we're gonna use that instead and use that as our big image in the front. So right now, all we're doing is just tracing out on top of the image of the notebook because that's what we're gonna see on the outside. So we're gonna cut out a left and a right, and then we're also gonna cut out our lining so that way we can sew it together and actually have a nice smooth back for everything to go together with. Yeah. Next, what I wanna do is make my interfacing. Now, normally I use a specific fabric type called interfacing, but for this one, I want to try to make the interfacing out of the pages of the notebook. So let's give it a shot. So remember earlier when I said we're going to change the seam allowance? Now's the time we're going to do that. So the plan is, so we're just going to cut out where the tape is. We're going to leave the outline of the 1/2 inch and then trace where we want that 1/2 inch to be. So that way when we go over to the sewing machine, we can place our pieces on top of the notebook and sew along that line. Does that make sense? Am I a crazy person? Probably, but this is what I thought would be best and most efficient to make this work. Is it? You'll just have to keep watching, so be sure to like this video so that way it does better in the algorithm and then the number keeps going up and it makes my brain happy. This project took me 14 hours. Okay, so now that we're at the sewing machine, we're gonna get a nice little thick amount of sheets of paper. So that way when we place it on top, we get a nice thick base to supplement for not having interfacing. This is now our interfacing. We're using the paper from the notebook as our interfacing. Isn't that unique and interesting? I thought it was pretty neat. I thought it was a pretty clever way of using all the material and not just having like the face and doing like the Pokemon cards. If you haven't seen the Pokemon cards, you should go watch that video. It's like one of my favorite things I made. Go watch the Pokemon card video. Anyway, back to Spider-Man. Back to Spider-Man. Back to Spider-Man. So once we sew along our lines, we're gonna cut out around it so that way we can actually get the proper seam allowance in there, which is none. And then we have our nice little pieces. Cool. Now that all of these are all together, before I actually start sewing together the main body, I'm gonna make the lining while we're here. So let's do that. Now we're just gonna sew the lining. Why did I do it here? Because I wanted to. I don't know. I just wanted to get this out of the way so I can focus on sewing paper together. That's what the video should be called. Sewing paper together. So it's just 1/2 inch. That's why we kept on the 1/2 inch before we cut it off and cut everything out is just for the lining to make things more efficient and easier. Okay, here's our lining. So now we're gonna actually start sewing the main body together. So let's do that. All right, this is POV, the unspeakable horrors never end. So this is how we're gonna sew everything together. We're gonna take our 2 pieces here. We're gonna push them together, tag stitch. Cool. Then we're gonna slide over to this machine. Then we take some bias tape here and sew it onto the main body. I mean, there it is. It's sewn together, kinda. All right, now let's just do it for the rest of them. That's kind of crazy. It's finally time for a long sewing portion of the video. So you know what time it is? It's tier list time. Let's go. Every week, of course, we throw our material that we're working on onto the tier list, and the notebook is a D tier. Yeah, it's not great. It's a D tier. We're showing paper, which is just weaker cardboard. So everything is just kind of ripping. I don't know if I remembered to take a picture of the inside of the corset before I threw everything together, but it's a miracle that everything still was holding together. It literally looks like there's a rip where every stitch is. And I think it was just kind of being held together because of how quickly I was moving. If I took any longer on this project, I don't think there would be a completed thing. I would need to pull some shenanigans to keep working, but I did manage to get everything together. So don't fear about that. But yeah. So again, all we're doing is just adding a zigzag stitch where our pieces are going to go together. Then we're going to take our bias tape, sew over those seams, and the only reason why this is going to work is because of the bias tape. So W bias tape. Cool. So now let's switch over to the cutting table and we can start adding in our bones. Okay. So here is where we're at. Here's what the inside's looking like right now. It's kind of falling apart just a little bit, but we're gonna pretend it's not, and we're gonna keep moving forward. Now it's time to add in our bones. So I want to take this spiral and use this as our boning. So let's try to do that. You see this? This was a bad idea. It's too thin. It's way too small, way too thin, and I couldn't really get the twirl out of it. So it was just kind of going in there and like ripping the seams and the paper on the inside. Okay, this is just not gonna work. I'm gonna use regular bones. All right, we're just using plastic bones, 1/2 inch from the top, 1/2 inch from the bottom. Nothing cool, nothing new, nothing special. All right, we're just gonna make sure and do our best not to rip our seams anymore. Because again, we're working with paper. I don't know if I've said this yet, but we're working with paper. You're not supposed to sew with paper. But that's the video. Okay, we're gonna finish putting the bones in now. But we're working with paper. Alrighty, now let's close this up and continue the project. That does look very cool though. Step 1 of the completing of the sewing portion of the video. So all we're doing right now is adding a top stitch at the top and the bottom and the sides to add our lining in. After that, we're gonna take some bias tape, sew 1/4 inch on the top, then we're gonna flip it over, then sew again on the top, so that way it's all nice and finished. And once we did the bias at the top, we're also gonna do the bias at the bottom, so that way it looks nice, cohesive, and clean. I also had to chop off a bunch of stuff because when I sewed with the paper facing down, it ripped. The treads of the machine ripped the paper. So we're just gonna trim it and pretend that didn't happen, and we're gonna finish the project. I love working with paper. That's half the videos. That's half the videos. Half the time it's like, oh, can I turn paper, but in a different form, into a corset? Sometimes. So now let us add our grommets. Loud hammer. I'm Spiderman. This is Spiderman video. Oh. Flip. Okay, there's a hammer. We're gonna use a hammer. Now let's lace it up on the form. Before we see the completed note set Spider-Man edition on the form, if you made it this far into the video, maybe consider subscribing. I work really hard on these, and I'd really appreciate it if you did that. All right, let's see the completed note set Spider-Man edition on the form. All right, there it is. I need to clean this up, but it's falling apart just a little bit. Like here, you can see into the notebook section. I might throw up a picture so that way you can see it better. But it's the paper is ripping. But there it is. It's on the form. So I'm gonna clean this up a little bit more and then cut to me talking in front of a green screen to get my final thoughts. So the answer to the age-old question, can you turn a notebook, Spider-Man edition, into a corset is... kinda, maybe, sort of. Here's the thing. If you look at it from afar, it looks awesome. The moment you step kind of close to it, you're like, oh, I see where the notebooks are. Here's the image up on the screen of where the seam is ripping. It's writing paper. So the moment you actually like puncture it, it's very likely to rip. So it ripped. It's on the form. It's a completed thing, but it's like a which also explains why it's in D tier. So, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, drop a comment on what weird material I should use next. Also, I started a new series. Every Wednesday, I will be making a vintage costume pattern. So, if you want to see that, this last week, I made an Ewok costume from 1983. That one was pretty fun, so you should go click on that video if you haven't seen it. Again, every Sunday, I make a corset out of weird material. So, you should stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll flip. Notebook you later. I really need to figure out like an outro.